My name is Jason. I'm 47, a mechanic from the edge of San Antonio. I work with my hands, live plain, and never expected to be anything more than what I was, until I met Holly. 5 years ago, we got married. She was divorced like me. Her ex-husband, Jeremy, lived a few states over and called just often enough to keep his name on the fridge calendar. Birthdays, Christmas. Once, when Trevor had the flu, he called for 3 minutes and made the boy cry harder than the fever did. That was the father. Trevor was 14 when I came into the picture. 14, bitter, and already learning how to hate things that hadn't hurt him yet. That kind of kid. You think you can fix it, you think if you just show up enough, pay enough, care enough, they'll soften. You lie to yourself early so you can sleep. I paid for gas, for new cleats, football camps, driver's edition. I paid to fix the old Mustang Jeremy left rotting in the garage like a memory. The damn thing hadn't run in years, but Trevor worshipped it like a shrine. So I found parts online, pulled weekends at the garage, rebuilt it bolt by bolt. Not to impress him, just to give him something that lasted. Something better than what he'd been left with. Holly said I was doing too much, but not in a way that meant stop. More like she wanted to acknowledge it before ignoring it. You don't have to, Jason, she'd say, right after asking if I could cover his phone bill or take a look at his laptop. So I did. I always did. I watched the kid's face during games, when he scored, when the crowd roared. And I thought maybe that meant something. I thought maybe, in those moments, I was part of the reason he could feel proud of himself. That maybe he'd look back one day and say, yeah, Jason helped me get there. He never did. Not once. The distance came slow at first. Cold shoulders. Shrugs. One-word answers. I chalked it up to adolescence. Holly made excuses on cue. He's just going through a phase. Teenagers are rough. You're taking it too personally. So I shut up and kept doing the work. The house became a routine. I'd wake up early, cook breakfast some days, check the tires on his car before he left. Sometimes he'd grunt thanks. Most times he wouldn't say a thing. Holly would drink her coffee and scroll her phone, and the silence would fill in all the places a family was supposed to live. I tried to be useful, to earn space in a home that never fully let me in. When Trevor forgot his backpack, I drove it to the school. When the heat went out, I fixed the furnace myself because I knew calling a technician would mean skipping groceries that week. But there were cracks, and they were getting wider. His friends came over less and less. The ones that did called me sir, with the same tone you'd use for a stranger in a store. Once, I overheard him talking in the basement, laughing with someone on the phone, saying, "He's not my stepdad. He's just some guy who lives here." It stung. But I swallowed it. I kept showing up. When he turned 17, I bought him new tires. He didn't even notice until I pointed them out. "Cool," he said, then disappeared inside. Didn't look back. And Holly? She didn't say a thing. One day, Trevor's school counselor called Holly about a college prep program. She missed the call, so I picked up, took the details, wrote them down, handed them to Trevor after dinner. He barely looked at me. The next day, he told Holly I was trying too hard. She laughed. He didn't mean it like that. Always the same refrain. But I remember one night clearer than the rest. We were driving home from practice. His ankle was twisted from a rough play, so I picked him up. It was late. The sky was a dull orange from the city lights, the road slick from a recent storm. He sat in the passenger seat, scrolling on his phone. I asked if he wanted to grab food on the way back. "No thanks," he mumbled. Silence stretched between us. Then, out of nowhere, he chuckled. Not a full laugh, just a bitter exhale of air through his nose. "You're just the guy Mom's been stuck with," he said. He didn't look at me, just said it like reading a fact out loud. I gripped the steering wheel. My knuckles went white, but I didn't say a word, because there was nothing to say. He didn't mean it as a joke. And even if he did, the joke had weight. It wasn't just a sentence. It was a verdict, a summary of everything I'd done, everything I'd carried, boiled down to a throwaway line from a kid who never saw me as anything but a stand-in, a substitute, an intruder with a bank account. We got home. He went inside. I sat in the truck for another 10 minutes, staring at the dashboard like it owed me an answer. Later that night, I told Holly. She was cooking, stirring something in a pan. I said it quietly, like confessing a sin. Her face didn't change. "He didn't mean it like that," she said again. No anger, no defense of me, just the same tired absolution she gave him every time. And I realized then, she believed it too. Maybe not in those words, but in spirit. Because she never corrected him, never stood between us, never said, "That man deserves your respect." Her silence had always been agreement. I just hadn't wanted to hear it. That night I walked through the house like a ghost, past the pictures on the wall, none of which included me, past the trophies I helped him earn, the shelves I built, the carpet I paid to replace when the roof leaked 2 winters ago. Everything I touched, everything I gave, existed like I didn't. And I understood something that I should have learned long ago. You can buy the groceries. You can fix the car. You can break your back for people who look right through you. But if they don't see you, none of it counts. Love isn't enough. Presence isn't enough. And the sentence, the one he threw like a beer can into the back seat, played on loop in my head. You're just the guy mom's been stuck with. The truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's whispered. Sometimes it sounds like a joke. But that night it was a knife. And I stopped pretending I hadn't been bleeding for years. That night, after Trevor dropped that line like it meant nothing, I sat in the truck for a long time after he went inside. Engine off. Rain tapping the windshield. My hands rested on the steering wheel like they were holding something precious. Except they weren't. They were empty. I used to imagine what fatherhood might feel like. Not in some storybook way. Just solid. A handshake after a good game. A shared silence that didn't feel like cold air. A sense that someone, even just one person in that house, saw me as more than a fixture. But all I had was this weight in my chest. Like something had finally caved in. I walked in the front door. Holly was in the kitchen, slicing peppers, humming softly to herself like the world hadn't shifted 30 minutes earlier. I watched her for a second. The curve of her back. The slow rhythm of her hands. She didn't look up when I walked in. Didn't ask how practice went. Didn't notice the storm in my face. "He said something," I said. She didn't stop cutting. "What?" "Trevor. In the truck. He said I was just the guy you've been stuck with." The knife paused, hovering above the cutting board. But she didn't turn around. She didn't look me in the eye. And then she spoke. "He didn't mean it like that." 6 words. No emotion. No fire. Just resignation. Like she'd already decided what mattered and what didn't. And I wasn't in the category worth defending. I waited. For anything. A sigh. Correction. A scrap of support. Nothing came. Just the soft sound of chopped peppers falling onto the board. I turned and left the room. That night, after they went to bed, I walked the house. Quietly. No anger, just decision. I opened the drawer where we kept the spare keys and took back the ones to the pickup, the one I'd paid for outright, title in my name. I walked into the garage and emptied the back of it. My tools. My jack. My socket set that had traveled with me from my first apartment to this house. All of it came out. I boxed everything and loaded it into the truck bed. Next, the gas card. I found it tucked in the mail tray by the door, where Trevor usually left it. I cut it into 4 pieces. Placed the shards in a neat row on the kitchen counter. The keys to the Mustang? I set them on the table, right next to the cut-up card. I didn't say anything. I didn't write a note. I went to sleep at the garage I used to rent before I moved in with Holly. It still smelled like brake fluid and sweat and old promises. But it was mine. 4 walls and a cot in the back room. A place that didn't question my worth every time I walked through the door. The next morning, Trevor missed practice. His car sat cold in the driveway. Tank empty. Gear bag untouched. Nobody called me. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was Holly. "Is this some kind of punishment?" she asked. No hello. No checking in. I didn't answer. "He's just a kid, Jason. You can't do this." Her voice was hard now. Defensive. The same tone she used when Trevor mouthed off and she didn't want to admit it. You can't just walk out like this, she added. We can't do this without you. That word again. We, like I was part of something, like we had ever been a team. I thought about every night I'd stayed up waiting for Trevor to come home safe. Every time I'd rearranged my schedule to get him to a game, a study session, a date. Every meal I'd paid for. Every time I'd filled that car's tank so he wouldn't have to ask. And I said calm and low, if I'm nobody, then my support means nothing. And I hung up. A few days passed. Nobody showed up at the garage. But I could feel them feeling my absence. That's the thing about being taken for granted. You disappear, and suddenly everything starts to fall apart. The Mustang didn't move. I'd siphoned most of the gas out before I left. Let them wonder why. Let them sit in it. I checked my bank statements. Canceled the streaming accounts I'd set up under my card. Unlinked the groceries delivery app from my name. Closed out the spare phone line on our plan, the one Trevor used for his second number. And I waited. It was 5 days before Trevor came to the garage. He didn't knock. Just stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the afternoon light. His voice was uncertain. Mike, Jason. I didn't look up from the workbench. You're old enough now, I said. Time to learn that comfort isn't free. It's earned. He nodded slowly. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something more. Maybe sorry. Maybe nothing. But what I saw wasn't regret. It was fear. Fear of losing the ride. The safety net. The quiet, invisible engine behind his easy life. He walked away without saying anything else. That night, Holly texted. Said she was picking up extra shifts. That things were hard. I didn't respond. I knew what she was asking without asking it. Come back. Help. Rejoin the team. But I wasn't part of that team. I never had been. I had been the guy with the wallet. With the time. With the unspoken promise that I would fill in all the blanks Jeremy left behind. But I was done being the stand-in. Done covering for a father who didn't show up and a partner who didn't speak up. And maybe they were realizing now what I had always known. They never carried me. Carried them. The next week, Trevor started missing school. Holly called again, voice softer now. Tired. He's slipping, Jason. He needs stability. He needs you. I stared at the wall while she talked. He said he was sorry, she added. But I remembered his face. Not sorrow. Not understanding. Just the look of someone who realized the ground was finally gone from under him. I'm not the one he needs to say it to, I said. He needs to say it to himself. She didn't reply. That silence, that void where there should have been something real, that was the truth. Later that week, I drove by the house. Just once. Trash cans overflowing. The porch light I'd fixed flickering again. Trevor sitting on the front steps, staring at the Mustang like it might start itself out of guilt. I didn't stop. I kept driving. Because some wounds don't heal. They scar. And the deeper ones, the ones no one sees, those become lessons. That night, I slept in the cot behind my workbench. The rain came hard, leaking through the corner I never patched. I didn't move to fix it. I let it fall. Because something in me had shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. Just awake. Awake to the truth that love without respect is a slow death. And I had finally stepped out of the coffin they built for me with their silence. The first week without me, they waited. That's what people do when they've grown used to certainty. They wait for the return, for the man to come back and take the weight off their shoulders again. It doesn't cross their minds that he might be gone for good. Trevor missed 2 more practices. No car, no ride. Holly drove him once. Texted me afterward in clipped, tense sentences. I can't keep doing this. You know he's not ready. Ready for what? Responsibility? Independence? The basic give and take of human decency? He was ready enough to speak the truth when he thought it had no cost. The silence between us stretched longer with each passing day. I didn't check in. Didn't hover. I kept to the garage. Spent my time fixing what was broken. Engines, radiators, my own spine. The garage became more than just shelter. It was sanctuary. 4 walls, 1 roof, and not a single person expecting me to be something I wasn't. Then the second week hit. That's when the cracks started forming in the pretty picture they'd painted for themselves. The first call came on a Monday. Holly again. Her voice wasn't angry this time. It was shaky. The bank called. The mortgage bounced. I didn't say anything. She went on. I thought we had that account on autopay. We did. My account. My name. My deposits. She paused. You took it off? I did. Jason. Her voice cracked on my name. You said we can't do this without you, I said flat. And then, you were right. I hung up. 3 days later, a different number showed up on my phone. Trevor. I let it ring. He didn't leave a message. The next day, he showed up at the garage again. This time with less bluster. His clothes were wrinkled. His face pale. He looked like someone who'd just learned the world doesn't run on intention. He didn't knock. Just stood in the doorway again, same as before. I need to get to school, he said. Can I borrow the truck? I didn't even glance up from the alternator I was working on. No. His voice rose a little. Not angry, just confused. I said I was sorry. No, you didn't. He looked at the floor. I kept talking. And even if you had, sorry doesn't refill the tank. Doesn't change what you said. Doesn't put oil in the engine. He shifted his weight, eyes still down. I'll pay you back. I laughed once, short and bitter. With what? His jaw clenched. I'm trying, okay? You don't have to be such a... I stood. Fast. Hard. The way the chair scraped back against the floor made him flinch. You want to finish that sentence? He didn't. Just stared at me like he finally realized I wasn't bluffing. I walked to the tool chest, pulled out a rag, wiped my hands. You had 5 years, I said. 5 years to see what I was doing. 5 years to look me in the eye and say, thanks. Or hell, even just not spit on me. And you couldn't do it. He opened his mouth. I raised a hand. Now you're here because you're scared. Not because you respect me. Not because you care. You're here because you need a ride. He turned red. Swallowed. I tossed the rag on the bench. You're not getting one. He left without a word. That night I thought about what it meant to withdraw. To pull back from a family and let them stand or fall on their own. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was consequence. Pure, clean consequence. When someone calls you nothing, you stop being everything. I'd paid for his cleats, his uniforms, the field trips, and birthday cakes. I'd covered Holly's medical bills when her insurance failed. I'd paid for therapy when Trevor broke down in 10th grade and wouldn't talk to anyone. And still, in the end, I was just the guy she married. Not a father. Not a partner. Just a tool they'd picked up and now found missing from the belt. A few days later, a letter came to the garage. Holly must have sent it by hand. Her handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a check. $250. Folded with a note. For the oil changes. And the phone bill. I'll pay what I can until we figure something else out. I read it 3 times. Not a single apology. Not a single word about Trevor. Just a transaction. Like I was a contractor she'd fallen behind paying. I didn't cash the check. I mailed it back. The next day, I went to the bank and removed myself from every shared account. Utilities, mortgage, cell plans. Everything. If my name was on it, I erased it. I also called the high school. Told them not to contact me anymore. I wasn't a legal guardian. Just a man who used to be there. Then came the 3rd week. The Mustang hadn't moved in 19 days. The tires were deflating. Moss growing around the wheel wells. Funny how fast something dies when the man keeping it alive walks away. Trevor finally snapped. He showed up again. Not at the garage. At my apartment. I'd moved into a 2-room space above an old diner I'd done repairs for years ago. Landlord gave me a deal. Said I deserved it. First person in years to say that word. Deserve. I opened the door. Trevor was standing there. Shoulders hunched. His eyes red. I'm failing 2 classes, he said. Coach said if I don't bring it up, I'm off the team. I leaned against the doorframe. So bring it up. I can't get to school. I can't concentrate. Mom's working all the time. There's no money. I let the silence hang. You win, okay? He snapped. You made your point. That one hit different. Like he thought this was a chess game. That my absence was a tactic. You think this is about winning? I asked. You left, he said, voice breaking. You left when we needed you. No, I said. I left when you told me I didn't belong. He looked like he wanted to argue. I didn't let him. Let me tell you something, Trevor. Support without respect is slavery. You might not understand that yet, but you will. His fists clenched. Not in anger, just helplessness. I never asked you to do all that, he muttered. No, I said. You didn't, but you sure cashed every check. His mouth shut. I showed up, I continued, even when it was hard, even when you ignored me, even when you called me just the guy Mom stuck with. I still showed up. You think I did that for praise? No, I did it because that's what men do. They show up. But when you spit on that, don't be surprised when the door closes. He didn't say anything, just stood there. The silence stretched. I'm not coming back, I said. He nodded once, barely visible. Then he left, and that's when I knew. He wasn't broken. He wasn't apologizing. He was just scared. Scared because the ground was gone, because the backup plan had a limit. That night, Holly called. I miss you, she said. I didn't respond. We're drowning. You were fine with me underwater, I said. Long silence. I didn't know, she whispered. You did. You just didn't look. I thought you'd always be there. That's the problem. She cried then. I listened. And then I hung up. Because there was nothing left to say. They'd mistaken my presence for permanence. They'd treated love like a faucet that never ran dry. But even the deepest wells go empty when the land keeps taking and never gives. The bill had come due. And for once I didn't pay it. I never moved back. Even after the calls started coming daily. Even when Holly showed up at the garage one rainy afternoon, soaked through and shaking, saying, "Things are different now." I stood in the doorway and looked her in the eye. Different? I asked. Or just harder without me? She didn't answer. And I didn't let her in. That's how it goes. Doesn't it? People don't see you until you're gone. They don't feel the walls shift until the beam holding up the roof walks out the front door. I wasn't bitter anymore. That burned itself out in the first week. Now I was something else. Cold? Maybe. Calm? Definitely. Like steel pulled from fire and left to harden. My new place was quiet. Small. An apartment above an old welding shop near the highway. The walls rattled when the trucks passed. The heater groaned like it missed being useful. But it was mine. Every nail, every scuff. Mine. I hung up one picture, just one. It wasn't of Trevor. Not of Holly. Just a photo of my father. Hands black with engine oil, holding a baby I didn't remember being. The man worked until he died. Never asked for thanks. But he sure as hell never tolerated disrespect. Maybe I made the mistake of thinking I could outgive contempt. That if I just kept showing up, the tide would turn. That if I kept patching the holes in the boat, someone would eventually learn to row. They never did. They let me row. And when I stopped, they blamed the waves. A month passed. Then too, I heard things. Through mutual friends. Through the grapevine that always finds a way. Holly had picked up another job. Trevor's grades kept slipping. The Mustang hadn't run since I left. Jeremy still wasn't returning calls. Surprise, surprise. One afternoon I got a letter. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Trevor. The envelope was thin. No check. No photos. Just a single page. It said, "Jason, I don't know how to start this, so I'll just say it. I was wrong. About you. About everything. I thought you'd always be there. I thought what you did was just what dads were supposed to do. I didn't see what it cost. I didn't care. I do now. Everything's falling apart. I wish I could take back what I said. I wish I could go back to that night in the truck. I've thought about it every day. I see the Mustang in the driveway and I remember how you rebuilt it. I remember how you stayed up with me before finals, even when you had to be up at 5. I remember the look on your face when I told you you were just the guy Mom got stuck with. I hate myself for that. I don't know if this means anything, but I'm sorry. Trevor. I read it twice, folded it back up, set it down. Then I went back to work. Because regret doesn't erase damage. Words don't replace years. And even apologies come with shadows. A week later, he showed up in person. He knocked this time. When I opened the door, he looked older. Like the world had finally put some weight on his shoulders. Shoulders I used to carry. "Hey," he said. I nodded. "Trevor." He held out a bag. Oil filter. Spark plugs. Thought I'd try to get the Mustang running again. I took the bag. Looked inside. "You know how to change this?" "No," he said. "Then why bring it?" He shrugged. "Figured I'd learn. Figured you might show me." I leaned against the frame. "You think that's how this works?" I asked. "You think you show up with a part and suddenly we're back where we were?" "No," he said quickly. "I know it's not that simple. But you're hoping it might be." He didn't answer. "Trevor, I carried you. For years. I gave everything. And you made it clear, so did your mother, that I was temporary. That I was useful, not loved." He winced. "You think because your real dad vanished, I'd stick around no matter what. You thought loyalty was automatic. That love was a faucet you could twist off and on depending on what you needed." His mouth opened. Closed. He looked like he wanted to argue. Like he wanted to say, "That's not fair." But he didn't. Because he knew it was. "I'm not angry," I told him. "Not anymore. But I'm not a father you get to dial up when things get hard. I'm not a backup plan. I was the plan. And you burned it." "I know," he said, voice thin. "I know I did." I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time I saw something real. Not panic. Not desperation. Remorse. I stepped aside. "Garage is out back," I said. "Let's see what you know." He blinked. "Really? Don't get ahead of yourself. This isn't a reunion. This is labor. You want to rebuild something? Start with the car." He followed me out. I handed him the wrench. Watched him struggle with the bolts. Watched the dirt get under his nails. Didn't say much. Just let the silence hang while he worked. Because sometimes, silence is the lesson. That night after he left, I sat alone in the living room. Same chair. Same lamp. Trevor's letter on the table. The smell of oil still on my hands. I didn't cry. Didn't smile. Just sat there. Heavy. Thinking. Wondering. Could things ever be fixed? Or were we just learning how to live with what we broke? A few days later, Holly called. "I heard he came by," she said. "He did." "He didn't tell me." "I'm not surprised." She hesitated. "I'm glad," she added, "that he's trying." I didn't reply. "Jason," she started. "Do you ever think we could?" "No," I said. Just that. No. Because her silence was louder than any betrayal. Because 5 years of watching her look the other way didn't vanish with one rainy doorstep. Trevor was a boy, but Holly was a partner. And when the time came to speak, she let me burn. So no, some doors don't get reopened. Weeks passed. The Mustang started running again, rough, uneven, but running. Trevor stopped by once a week. We didn't talk much, just worked. He brought his own tools, cleaned up after himself. I never asked about school, or football, or his mother. He never volunteered. We kept it in the bolts, in the grease, in the engine that needed both of us to stay alive. And that was enough for now. But here's what I've learned. Love is not enough. Sacrifice doesn't guarantee respect. And sometimes walking away is the only way to be seen. I gave everything to a family that couldn't say my name without apology. I bled for a boy who thought my worth ended with the keys in my pocket. And when I left, I found peace not because they changed, but because I did. I stopped trying to earn something that should have been freely given. I stopped begging to be loved by people who only knew how to take. And maybe that makes me cruel. Maybe it makes me heartless. But I'll ask you the same thing I asked myself the night I put the truck in drive and didn't look back. Was I wrong? Was I wrong to demand respect before I gave another drop of myself? Was I wrong to say, enough? After 5 years of swallowing silence? Or is there a point, somewhere in every man's life, where the only thing left to do is walk away? Not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving yourself. So tell me, if you had stood in my shoes, if you had heard those words, "You're just the guy mom's been stuck with," and watched the silence that followed, would you have stayed? Would you still be there now? Or would you have done what I did? Walked out, closed the door, and let the weight of their own words teach them what mine never could. Because love is free, but respect has a price, and I was done paying it.